Miss Unsinkable. If you board a ship and see this woman greeting passengers at the door, here is a piece of advice. Get off immediately. Violet Jessop was aboard the Titanic, the Britannic, and the Olympic when each of them met its doom. Death seemed to stalk her through the three most infamous maritime disasters in history. Yet, miraculously, she was the only one who proved to be truly unsinkable. In the early 20th century, the White Star Line created a legendary trio of sister ships, the Olympic, the Titanic, and the Britannic. They were hailed as engineering marvels, gigantic, luxurious, and perfectly safe. Violet Jessop, a young stewardess, simply wanted a steady job on these glamorous ocean routes. But fate had a different script. In 1911, she was aboard the Olympic when it collided violently with a warship. A year later, she transferred to the Titanic, surviving a freezing night in a lifeboat after the ship struck an iceberg. Most would have retired to dry land after two such horrors, but not Violet. She stepped onto the third ship, the Britannic, and this time, she faced a nightmare even more terrifying than the Titanic. In 1916, the Britannic struck a sea mine and sank 3 times faster than the Titanic. As Violet jumped into the water, she was nearly sucked into the massive, spinning propellers of the ship's engines. She was struck so hard that her skull fractured, yet she still managed to surface and survive. What allowed her to survive what killed thousands? It wasn't just luck. Violet possessed an almost supernatural composure. On the Titanic, she was ordered into a lifeboat specifically to set an example for panicked passengers, showing them that leaving the ship was safe. Even while drifting in the dark, frozen Atlantic, she held an abandoned baby tightly against her chest to keep it warm until rescue arrived. Violet Jessop passed away in 1971 at the age of 83, after 42 years of service at sea. Her story leaves us with a haunting question. Is life a series of random accidents, or do some people have an unbreakable contract with destiny? Violet survived the abyss 3 times, only to return to the ocean over and over again. After walking off the Titanic, would you ever board another ship? The Arctic Coffin. Would you dare to conquer the most hostile place on Earth inside a giant silk bubble filled with explosive gas? In 1897, 3 men stepped into the basket of a hydrogen balloon named the Eagle, cut the ropes, and drifted into the Arctic void. They believed they were flying toward glory, but in reality, they were riding a flying coffin with no way back. For 33 years, the world lost all trace of them, until a chance discovery on a frozen island revealed a truth more haunting than death itself. By the late 19th century, the North Pole was the holy grail of explorers, a blank white space on the map where every ship and dog sled had failed. Salomon August Andrée, a Swedish engineer, had a radical idea. If we cannot go through the ice, why don't we fly over it? He constructed the Urnen, the Eagle, a silk marvel hand-stitched with thousands of threads. But the Eagle was a broken bird before it even took flight. Andrée knew the balloon leaked hydrogen, but public pressure and pride pushed him forward anyway. Just 65 hours after takeoff, the dream shattered. Arctic fog and freezing mist clung to the silk, acting like an armor of lead. The extra weight dragged the balloon down, forcing the 3 men onto the drifting ice, hundreds of miles from their goal. Death did not come quickly. For the next 3 months, the men dragged heavy sleds across the melting ice like tiny ants in a white desert. In 1930, when hunters stumbled upon their camp on White Island, they found a treasure trove of secrets, film rolls that had remained intact for 3 decades. The photos revealed the balloon slumped on the ice like a dead whale. Their diaries recorded meals of raw polar bear meat and the slow despair as the currents pushed them further from land. Why did they die despite having food and ammunition? Some say parasites from the meat, others say exhaustion. But the truth is simpler. They were swallowed by the hubris of entering a place humans were never meant to go without humility. They had packed tuxedos to celebrate at the pole. Instead, those clothes became their shrouds. Andrée, Strindberg, and Frankel were dreamers, caught between the thin line of courage and recklessness. Their story is a brutal lesson in humility. Sometimes, the silk bubbles we build for our dreams are only as strong as the reality we choose to ignore. Memories Prison. Do you remember what color shirt you wore on August 29, 1980? Probably not. You likely don't even remember what you had for lunch last Tuesday. For most of us, forgetting is a biological necessity. But for Jill Price, Forgetting is a luxury she will never own. Give her any date from the last 40 years, and in a heartbeat, she will tell you the day of the week, the weather, and every painful or trivial detail of her life that day. Jill doesn't own a diary, she owns a live film running in her head, where the stop button is permanently broken. Forgetting is one of the brain's most vital functions. To keep us sane, the mind constantly filters and discards tons of data trash, strangers' faces, idle chatter, mundane routines. But scientists have always wondered, what happens if the trash filter fails? The answer arrived in 2006, when Jill Price became the first person diagnosed with HSAM, highly superior autobiographical memory. Unlike memory champions who use mind palaces to memorize cards, Jill doesn't try to remember. Every detail of her life since age 14 is automatically recorded in high definition. However, instead of pride, Jill felt terror. She sent a desperate email to neurologists. "I am being bombarded by the past. It's like a split screen in my head. One side is the present, and the other is a non-stop flood of memories." She didn't want fame, she wanted to forget. Living with HSAM is like carrying a pile of sensory shrapnel. For an ordinary person, time heals the sting of a breakup or a harsh insult. For Jill, the pain of 30 years ago is as sharp and raw as if it happened a second ago. When scientists tested her, they were stunned. They provided a random date, and within seconds, she identified the day of the week, major news events, and tiny personal moments. Her brain works like a Google search engine without a filter feature. Every mistake and heartbreak remains painfully alive, making it nearly impossible to enjoy the now. Jill Price changed our understanding of the mind. She proved that forgetting isn't a failure, it's an immune system for the soul. It allows us to heal, forgive ourselves, and move forward. Her story leaves us with a deep reflection. We complain about our goldfish memory, but perhaps the ability to let go is the greatest gift of all. If you woke up tomorrow remembering every second of your life, would it be your happiest day, or the start of a life sentence in the prison of your own past? The last Soviet citizen. What would you do if you were in outer space and received a message from Earth saying, "We don't have the money to bring you home"? This isn't a sci-fi thriller. It was the real-life nightmare of Sergei Krikalev. While he was floating 400 kilometers above the surface, the nation that sent him there, a nuclear superpower, suddenly disintegrated and vanished from the map. While millions below were celebrating their new freedom, Krikalev realized he had become an expensive leftover of history, a stateless ghost abandoned among the stars. In May 1991, Sergei Krikalev left Earth from the Baikonur Cosmodrome for a 5-month mission aboard the Mir space station. At the time, Mir was one of the Soviet Union's proudest achievements. Krikalev, a brilliant engineer, went up to work, promising his family he'd be back by autumn. But while Krikalev was busy with zero-gravity experiments, the world beneath his feet was fracturing. The Soviet Union began to collapse. When autumn arrived, the time he was supposed to return, Krikalev received a shocking message. Please wait a little longer. The reason was bitter. His country was bankrupt. Officials on the ground were too busy dividing a collapsing empire to organize his return. Krikalev fell into a cosmic gray zone. He was still performing a mission for a country that officially no longer existed. Krikalev could have abandoned Mir using the emergency escape capsule at any time. But he knew that if he left, the station, Russia's greatest achievement, would be unmanned, likely falling out of orbit to burn up in the atmosphere. With the pride of a cosmonaut, he chose to stay. Krikalev spent a total of 311 days in orbit, double his original mission time. As prolonged weightlessness weakened his body, he had to use the old codes of a dead nation to communicate with the ground. He even had to ask Western astronauts to bring him extra food and supplies because the supply ships from home had been cut. Finally, in March 1992, Krikalev was brought home. He left Earth from the Soviet Union, but when he landed on the plains, he found himself in the independent nation of Kazakhstan. His hometown, Leningrad, had been renamed St. Petersburg. He stepped out of the capsule wearing a flight suit embroidered with CCCP, a final, lonely fragment of an empire that had vanished into history. Sergei Krikalev is known as the last Soviet citizen. His story is a testament to loyalty that transcends politics. It reminds us that even when the world crumbles and everything you believe in is turned upside down, the only thing that keeps you standing is your sense of duty. Krikalev saw the fall of an empire from a perspective no one else had, from above the clouds, where there are no borders and no hate. Sometimes, to understand the value of home, you have to be pushed as far away from it as possible. The inverted reality. Do you believe that the reality you see right now is actually just a sweet lie your brain is telling you? Imagine this. You put on a special pair of glasses, and suddenly, the entire world is flipped 180 degrees. The sky is under your feet, the ground is hovering above your head, and every time you reach for a glass of water, your hand aimlessly wanders into empty air. Most of us would rip the glasses off within 5 minutes from nausea. But in 1896, psychologist George Stratton did the unthinkable. He wore those glasses for 8 consecutive days and nights. He wanted to know, is the human brain a rigid machine, or is it an artist capable of redrawing the entire universe to adapt to madness? Biologically, our eyes work like a primitive camera. The light passing through the retina actually creates an upside-down image. But because our brains are so sophisticated, they automatically flip the image back so we see up as up and down as down. We consider this stability an unchangeable law of nature. George Stratton asked a paradoxical question. If I use a lens to flip the image again before it hits my eye, will the brain have the patience to relearn how to see the world from scratch? Stratton's experience was not a pleasant journey. It was sensory torture. For the first 3 days, he was in a state of what we might call dry land seasickness. Even the simplest movements, like getting dressed or holding a spoon, became brutal challenges. His world was a mess of conflicting senses. His eyes said the object was up, but his hands felt it was down. But the most incredible twist happened on the 4th day. Stratton's brain began to surrender to the new reality. It stopped fighting and adapted. By the 5th day, the miracle of neuroplasticity revealed itself. Stratton began to see the world normally again, not because the image had flipped back, but because his brain had learned to interpret the upside-down image as correct. He could walk around his house, grab objects, and even write without feeling dizzy. His brain had created a new map of reality. It was like moving to a planet with different gravity. After a while, your body accepts the anomaly as the law. However, this experiment had one final haunting chapter. When Stratton took the glasses off after 8 days, our real reality now looked like a cruel joke. The normal world appeared upside down to him. He had to spend several more days convincing his brain, "Hey, we're back home now, flip the image one more time." George Stratton proved a shocking truth. Reality isn't what you see, it's what your brain wants you to see. We don't see the world with our eyes. We see it through experience and the constant recalibration of our neurons. It's an inspiring lesson. If the brain can learn to live in an upside-down world in just a few days, then no habit or prejudice is truly permanent. You possess the greatest self-correcting supercomputer in the universe. Do you have the courage to change your lens and see life differently? The suffocating laughter. They say laughter is the best medicine. But in 1962, at a girls' school in Tanganyika, laughter became a lethal virus. It didn't start with a joke, and it brought no joy. Instead, it spread like wildfire, exhausting hundreds, forcing dozens of schools to close, and turning a peaceful countryside into the scene of a psychological nightmare. What would you do if your mouth couldn't stop laughing, but your eyes were filled with terror and your body was screaming in pain? The event began at a girls' boarding school in the village of Kashasha, in what is now Tanzania. It was a strict school run by nuns, where students faced crushing academic pressure and rigid discipline. At the time, Tanganyika had just gained independence, and the younger generation carried the heavy weight of their family's expectations. Then, on January 30th, 1962, 3 girls suddenly started laughing uncontrollably. But instead of stopping after a few minutes, their laughter lasted for hours, then days. More terrifyingly, it began to jump from person to person like a living entity. In a short time, 95 out of 159 students were infected. The school closed and sent the girls home. But the cruel twist was that instead of killing the epidemic, this move accidentally turned the students into vectors of transmission. The laughter flooded into villages, spreading to parents, siblings, and neighboring schools. More than 1,000 people fell into uncontrollable fits of laughter, accompanied by pain, fainting, and strange skin rashes. Scientists rushed in to find a virus or bacteria in the food, but they found absolutely nothing. The truth behind this phenomenon lay not in the body, but in a psychological concept called mass psychogenic illness. When faced with extreme stress and pressure over a long period with no outlet, the system short-circuits. The laughter at Kashasha wasn't an expression of joy. It was a broken safety valve. The students' brains chose laughter as an unconscious defense mechanism to release suppressed tension. The most frightening part is its contagiousness. Humans unconsciously mirror the emotions of those around them. In an environment saturated with anxiety, once one person explodes, it triggers an uncontrollable chain reaction. This laughter plague lasted for over a year before finally vanishing, leaving a massive question mark over the mind's power to control the body. The 1962 laughter epidemic is a reminder that we master our brains far less than we think. Sometimes, suppressed emotions will find their way out in the most bizarre ways. It's a lesson for our modern world. In a life full of impossible expectations, are we accumulating our own psychological shocks inside? Don't ignore the small signs of stress. If not released properly, your brain might just rewrite the script for itself. Are you truly happy, or is your brain just trying not to collapse? The world is still full of hidden truths and stories that defy belief. If you're ready to uncover more of the most incredible and disturbing mysteries of our history, subscribe to Oddplane. Don't let the next story pass you by. Join us, and let's explore the unknown together. Thank you for watching, and stay curious. Goodbye.